Hello, and welcome to the Traveling Vegan TV show. I am so excited that I have a guest here who flew in all the way from the southernmost region of Mexico. I have with me best-selling author Travis King. Hello, Travis.
Hey, Philip. Thanks for having me, man.
Great. Welcome to the show. I invited you all the way from Mexico because you just came out with this book, which I read your book on the edge of my seat, or if I was in bed, it was on the edge of my bed. I love the book, and so congratulations.
Thanks, man.
You have the second best travel book that's ever been written.
What's the first one? This guy here?
Yeah, well, everybody knows that already.
All right, yeah.
No, so great. Well, tell me about the book. Let's do this. We sit down, we're strangers, we sit down next to each other in an airplane, and this is before the pandemic when people would actually strike up conversations.
Yeah.
So we strike up a conversation, you and I, and you tell me about the book. And so tell your new airline passenger friend about your book, and it's called Not That Anyone Asked, right?
Not That Anyone Asked, a travel memoir about sex, drugs, love, and finding purpose. And on the top here, I put an unplanned true story because it definitely was that. But yeah, in a nutshell, it's essentially a chronological retelling of my first 4 years on the road. And I took off after I finished grad school just with a backpack, a one-way flight into South America, basically. And that trip basically led me to now living in Mexico, like if I look back at it in that way. But the book is about those first 4 years where I was just sort of alone and making it up as I went and trying to figure out where the next paycheck was coming from, trying to figure out how to afford the trip, trying to figure out how to not make my parents disappointed in their son.
What was your parents' reaction? I know what my parents' reaction when I told them I was going away for a year. What was their reaction?
I mean, the first trip they were relatively supportive because I had just finished like a pretty good, I got a master's degree, and they thought that I was going to go sort of sow my travel oats and then get a job with my master's degree. Joke's on them because now I'm still out here traveling and, now I wrote a book and all this. But I think eventually they kind of softened to the idea that I didn't want to live a life of their expectations, but I had my own sort of plan and wanderlust dreams, and I wanted to see more of the world than they had. And
you've really captured that in the book. Can you tell us maybe some stories, maybe your top one or two stories from the book? And where was it?
Yeah, so I mean, early on in the book, I think like when anybody goes on a big trip to kind of try to see the world and find their place in it, that first few months is really like saturated with growth and learning and crazy adventures because it's all so new and everything is really interesting in that way. So early on, the first country I spent a lot of time in was Colombia, and at some point in Colombia, actually was given this advice from another traveler I met of how I could go and make my own cocaine, which I wasn't somebody that did a lot of drugs when I was growing up or anything, but in Colombia, you kind of feel like when in Rome, like this is where it all comes from, so I might as well dabble or see what's going on with this. So anyway, I met a guy that used to work for Pablo Escobar as one of his top scientists.
So he had the secret formula like for Coke.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, the original formula.
The original Coke classic, right?
Yeah. And so I went with him, and we did that. That's one of the crazier stories in the book. I'll let you read the book and read that story for yourself if you want to learn more about that.
Yeah, I mean, our parents are going to be watching this show. So
exactly. Got to keep it PC for them.
Yeah, we'll keep it classy, right?
But that's one of my favorite stories. I think the other one that's like towards the end that's kind of like one of the final climaxes of the book is when I was living in Australia. I was there on a working visa for a year. And I ended up in this place called Byron Bay. If you've been to Australia, you might know it. It's the the easternmost point of the whole continent. And there's dolphins there. And I was a kayak guide, chasing dolphins around with tourists and just living like a really great life. And eventually, I had to leave because of my work visa was up, and I returned on a tourist visa. So I kind of knew what I was doing, but I was working illegally, and all my bosses wanted me to come back, and they were like, "Hey, don't worry about it. We'll just pay you in cash or whatever." So I resumed my life there with all three of these amazing jobs I had. And at one point, I went to visit a buddy in Thailand, and we did some partying in the Gulf of Thailand and hopped around some islands. And on the way back into Australia, everybody told me like to be careful, like, watch your stuff. Like they are very like protective of the borders and people like coming in and out illegally. So I deleted everything off my phone. I thought I was playing it super safe, but as soon as I tried to get back in and they scanned my passport, the lady was like, "You need to talk to her." And she handed my passport to this even scarier person, and it basically ended up in like a 5-hour interrogation. I was locked into one of those rooms that you see in Law and Order where there's like a camera in the corner and it's like steel doors on either side. And they cracked my phone or whatever, and they looked through all of it, and they basically found out that I had been kayak guiding and working illegally in
They
the
even
country.
asked you about, they saw you playing guitar on a street corner.
Yeah,
and-
they're strict, man. Like if you
And they
made
said
any
that
money-
was enough to put you in jail. And
Yeah.
you were technically in jail for that time,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, they handcuffed me when I left. They gave me a really official document that said like your visa's been revoked, you can no longer stay in Australia. And then they took me to an immigration prison, handcuffs. At the prison, they asked if I smoked menthol or regular cigarettes, and I was like, "Wow, I'm in prison.
You're in prison now.
This is very prison." And anyway, that prison experience too, like in the end, I stayed in a room with 3 guys that were all from the Middle East, like a Kurdish guy, an Iraqi guy, and an Afghani guy. And they were super sweet. And I remember like playing my guitar for those guys at this little prison.
They let you keep your guitar?
No, the one of the guys, the Kurdish guy, had his own guitar somehow. He'd been there for 2 years.
How were the strings? Was missing strings? Like,
No, it was
okay?
It was like a basic, like a beginner acoustic guitar. And then in the end, like I'd only spent 2 days there. These guys, all 3 of my roommates had been there for over a year, and it just really, like shaded my experience in jail with a totally different feeling of like, man, I'm actually pretty lucky. I'm just about to end up in Asia and travel. And the one guy, the biggest guy, who was like scary, covered in tattoos, muscly, he folded this little origami swan and gave it to me as I was leaving to go get on my flight to get kicked out of the country. And he was like, don't forget, you have friends in here in prison who are like a bird trapped in a cage, and you're now a free bird again, and go enjoy your travels and go have a good time. And so, yeah, I always think about those guys, and I still have that little origami swan, actually.
They say traveling is the only thing you buy that makes you richer. And in reading your book, you did it in a backpacker way.
Yeah.
It was no Lux, there was no luxury travel
No.
gig that you had, and you did tell me about what it's like to be a backpacker and to go in and out of hostels and common areas, and maybe some funny stories have happened when you're, I guess, bunking, co-ed bunking.
Yeah.
And how is that?
So that's a great question. I really love, I don't know, like the culture of travel is something that I think once you experience it and you fall into it and you are, open to it, it's really addicting. Because, like, I don't know, say you go to a bar here, anywhere in the U.S., and you, like, look at a stranger and say, hey, I'm Travis. The most likely reaction you'll get is somebody being like, why do you not have friends? Or, like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you trying to talk to me? We've never met. But when you're at a hostel anywhere in the world, the culture itself is basically set up to meet new people, and it's expected that you'll say, hey, what's up? Like, what's your story? Where are you from? What are you doing here? How long are you here? What are you doing tomorrow? Let's go on a hike together, or whatever. So just that natural sort of feeling of we're all doing this together. We're all sort of looking for companionship and friendship and to make stories with new people in our lives. That feeling is was so addicting to me. So I really love that part of the culture of travel where the expectation is that you're gonna say hi to a stranger, not you're the weirdo for saying hi to a stranger. So I really love that about travel. And I mean, yeah, I did it all as cheap as possible. I remember making decisions between staying somewhere for like $8 a night or $6 a night and being like, I'll stay for $6 a night. And like, I was really at that point where I knew what the end of my bank balance, and it wasn't that much when I started. So it was really just this survival game of seeing how long I could stretch each trip. And
That's remarkable.
Yeah, I found ways to make money in the book, but it was all very like creative and just trying to figure it out.
Those are life lessons that even as you get older, and then you be more, let's say, financially stable, or kind of established, you'll take those lessons of, economy.
Totally.
Which, and you'll take and you'll apply that to, at that point, I know you're working on a business.
Yeah.
Tell me about the business that you're working on right now, the vision that you have. Now that you've been all over the world, it seems like you're kind of laying some roots down.
Finally.
What's the name of the town in Mexico?
So in Puerto Escondido. It's on the Oaxacan coast. It's my favorite place. I've been traveling for so long, and I've seen a lot of places. And one of the filters that my mind was always running was basically like, if I wanted to put down roots and set up shop somewhere, where would it be? And there's definitely a few other places in the world that I've considered starting something like, creating a hostel or creating a community somewhere. But ultimately, I'm now, in a long-term relationship with a wonderful Mexican woman named Maria. So her and I, it's like easy to do it with her in Mexico. And I also just really love this town. So all the other things added up to saying, all right, let's go to Puerto. And I spent all of my life savings on a piece of land there. So yeah, the next project is to try to develop it and open up a co-living, co-working more or less. So basically a community on the beach of people that can, work remotely and, be healthy, be happy, have a social network around them where, basically, like we were talking, it's like a fail-proof setup for creating an environment where like it's going to be really hard to not have a good life. And I just want to make a place that people come to and they just live the best version of their life possible with all those things that make up a good life.
Cape life.
Cape life.
Celebratory, adventurous, purposeful, and extraordinary.
Extraordinary, for sure.
So your book, definitely living a Cape life when I read your book. And you were intent, you were absolutely determined not to fall into the regular expectations of what our parents and our society, and you were able to live your truth, and then your book chronicled you living your truth, mistakes and all, warts and all.
Yeah.
And give me a lesson that maybe you learned the hard way, a life lesson that was a tough one to learn. In this book, in your travels.
I guess one is just that, like, I think one thing that travel teaches everybody is that your ability to handle difficult situations is maybe greater than you might realize. Because the highs of travel are higher than they are in your normal life, and the lows of travel are certainly lower. Like I have this really vivid.
You lost your wallet.
Dude,
you lost your
so
cell
many
phone.
phones and wallets. Like I think I lost my phone like 3 or 4 times in the first like 6 months of traveling because I just wasn't like good at keeping track of my stuff yet. It's something that you kind of grow when you grow your travel chops.
Yeah.
But like I have a vivid memory of being in the Perhentian Islands in Malaysia, and I had gotten super sunburned from doing a snorkel tour. I'd been partying for too many nights in a row, so I woke up with like a really bad sinus infection, and also the bed I was sleeping in had a super terrible bed bug infestation. And that next day I woke up with like an infinity number of bed bug bites, sunburn, coughing, and I just remember feeling like I don't know anybody here on this island. Like nobody cares that I'm like in a nearly comatose, should be in a hospital kind of state. And I just had to wait it out, and I just let everything heal and try to make sure I could, kill all the bed bugs or whatever.
Show us the book and tell us about this picture and what that moment on the front cover.
Yeah.
This picture, this moment in time looks like you're flying through the air. What's that all about?
A leap of faith. I mean, that's kind of why I liked it for the cover image. It kind of has that, like hidden metaphor of taking a leap of faith, and that's what travel is for most people. But this was on Key Calker in Belize, and a great little island that I thought I was going to go to for 2 days, and ended up staying for about 2 weeks, and had the time of my life over there, and where I met a lot of my good travel friends, and you find community on the road really easily. So I had a really great time on this trip, and especially on this island, and it just fit. I just thought it fit well.
Were you jumping off of a train? Looks like you're flying like a trampoline or something.
I was jumping off of a pier, but I think it was like like a big log up on the pier that I could like get some height on and actually go for it. But yeah, it worked out great. And
Who took the picture?
This girl named Rachel, and actually I wrote her. I found her on Facebook because keep in touch with all these people through all these social media forums now. And I wrote her. I was like, hey, I'm using your photo for the cover of my book, and she was very happy about it. So
that's great.
Yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out too. And actually, I designed it myself. Like of all the things that I had help with on the book, I imagined early on that I would probably have a professional book cover design maker make the cover, but then I just took a crack at it, and everybody I showed it to was like, no, I really like it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep it.
I love the cover. Like I said,
man.
You have the second greatest travel book ever written.
Your cover's great too, actually.
So,
your cover's really
thank you. Congratulations on a great book.
Thanks.
Highly recommend the book. I read it very carefully, and it really, really captures the spirit and the joy of traveling and all the experiences, all the people. I was so fascinated. And I'm not like this. I mean, I'm not an unfriendly person, but I just love the way you would show up in a new city, go to a hostel, and then within 12 hours you had your tribe.
Yeah, had some stories to write.
I guess you were born to be the camp counselor. You
Yeah.
know? So now you're living the adult version of the camp counselor.
Exactly.
And I guess that in another way to put it is you're a natural leader. We all have gifts, and so you are actually using your gift to live a Cape life.
Yeah.
So tell me about some of the events and that you organized, some of the groups and connections that you made when you got to a new town, and you make friends, and then what's the most I don't want to say craziest thing, but yeah, what's the craziest thing you did with people you just met? Let's say.
Making cocaine from scratch. That's definitely one of them. I did an ayahuasca ceremony about a day after I arrived somewhere. A lot of people plan those trips out for years or months ahead of time and carefully, watch their diet and everything leading up to it.
Yeah.
But I went and did ayahuasca with a bunch of people that I met in Colombia as well. All types of stuff, man. It just happens naturally because everybody's looking for connection when you're traveling, and yeah, it's really easy to find your crew and to find your tribe when you're out on the road, because that's what everybody's thirsty for, and they want to find other people to put into their best stories, and then you're just out there making your best stories together.
Well, great. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Before we leave, give us your coordinates, where we can find you on social media, where can we find this book, and in what forms?
Awesome. So the book is on Amazon. You can find it. You can get it on ebook on your Kindle, or you can order the paperback. It ships to about 10 different countries around the world. And you can find it on Facebook as well. I have a Facebook page up. There's an Instagram, NTAA_memoir is the Instagram account for this. And I also have a website, traviswking.com. So if you want to find more information about myself and the book and other things I've written in the past, my blogs, things like that, it's all on there. But really, if you're going to read anything that I've written, read this. I spent 4 years of my life working on it, and I spent about a year editing it to try to make it the best possible book, where every little paragraph and every little sentence sings, and I'm really proud of it, and I hope you read it.
Great. Thank you, Travis.
Thanks so much.
Please go out and read Travis's book, Not That Anyone Asked. And also, don't forget my best-selling book, Have Laptop Will Travel, Memoirs of a Digital Nomad. We actually have a lot of similarities about the book itself.
We do, man.
Different perspectives, which is what makes travel great, what makes people great. That we're not all the same. We have different perspectives. So thanks again for coming on the show. And thank you everyone there for watching the show, The Traveling Vegan Show. Thank you so much.